was born in Smith Falls. It's on the Rideau River, halfway between Ottawa and Kingston, on that Rideau River there. My background was half and half, living in town, and had lots of relatives out in the farm that I loved going out there and enjoying it. And one of the things that intrigued me was I could go out sometimes when my cousins would be going to school, and I could go to school with them for a day, and I saw how the 8 grades in one room fit, and I liked that. And I think that's what kind of led me on to being a student. So I had more of a, I did have an agricultural background. I went to grade 8 and then changed over into the high school and did my grade 13 there, and then from there to normal school. It was just a 1 year. A little bit more for me because I took the regular normal school and I tacked on another agricultural study that I had to stay 3 weeks longer in the school and write a final exam on it. It was separate from my degree, but it was an add-on. I was offered a position in Ottawa with a fantastic salary of $1,350 a year, which didn't sound too good for me because I had borrowed to go to school, and I came from a family of 8. Anyway, I picked up the paper and I saw a school in Chisholm advertised for $1,800 a year. So I applied and I was accepted, and I came up here then. It was on Pioneer Road, and do you know where I mean? It was changed into a house, or torn down gradually and changed into a house by Doug and Ann Oshel, and they lived there for a number of years, but it was directly across the road from the Ulrick farm. And Frank and I were married 3 years after I came up there. I only taught there 2 years. It was an 8th grade school, but I didn't have any grade 8s the first year that I was there. So I only had 7 grades. We were trained for it because there were so many rural schools. And I had done practice teaching in rural schools. And you just adjusted to it, and you got things arranged so that you could see each class, you know, at least once a day separately from any of the others. Sometimes you grouped for science. You grouped two classes together and tried to do things like that with them. And I had some remarkable students. I had the Anderson twins, who went on both to be doctors. And I had Keith, for a while, I taught in another school there, part-time for a lady, and I had Keith Tops, who went on to be Professor Tops at North Bay, and just wonderful kids. So much different because they were expected to do well. Most of their mothers were teachers, and they knew what should be going on and how the kids should be behaving and the whole thing. So I really had 2 very good years there. it was unheard of for a farm wife to go out and work. But about 5 years or 6 years after that, there was a tremendous shortage of teachers. And a whole lot of them went back to teach. Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Smith, Eleanor Smith, Barbara Anderson. You know, I would say there were Mrs. Pilgrim, and she taught for a number of years. I don't know if you ever had her. No, she taught in Nipissing for a few years, and then she was out here at the school out here. But anyway, they drove from Chisholm out to, she and Eleanor for a number of years. Oh yes, and the other one that went back to teaching, and she went back because her husband died suddenly, was Mrs. Miller, right there on the corner by the overpass that's gone now. And she taught all of my children in elementary school. There was the fire, and it was in mid-year, and what to do with those kids. So the United Church had a room that they had Sunday school in and so on. They moved the children into that. And Eileen Montgomery was the teacher in that school that year. And she just nicely got settled into it when she took the mumps. And I went in to supply for her in that little usher. You just wouldn't believe how difficult that was until the end. I think I was only 6 weeks in it, but I sure felt sorry for her for the rest of the year. I married and started to raise a family. And I went back to, I did supply teaching. I did supply teaching all around well, I taught in Chisholm, the new school that they built in Chisholm. Then I did some supply teaching. Mr. Stromberg was the principal there. Then he moved to Callendar, and then he called me to come up and be his. At that time, they used to allow the principal to have one afternoon a week off and have somebody in, and I did that for him for a number of years. And then Mr. Smith came to Chisholm School, and then he went to Sundridge, and then he wanted me to go down and do supply work in Sundridge. So I made I could do this because I didn't always have to go when they called. And if if the farm was busy and the kids were busy and they had their own activities, and if there was something on, I'd say I couldn't go that day, and it was just, so that's how I did it. We had dairy cattle, and we had milking shorthorns, and we exhibited them at the CNE and the Royal, and we did very well with them, and we exhibited them 1 year at the Calgary Stampede. We were top winners. That year was special out there because they had it was for people from all over, like you could bring in your cattle from America, from England and all. It was a special event. We showed at those fairs, and it was good for us because we made contacts with local farmers who bought breeding cattle from us then. And of course, that was the reason for the showing at the other fairs too, but to show what they call a herd, you had to have 4 animals. And then we had to have a big bull. And then we had junior cattle. I would say about 12. We were milking 35, and you'd have at least 35 more. You'd have all the different age levels, ones that are dry and ones that you're raising to sell and all. I think I can't remember now the stock. I didn't milk regularly. But if we had an animal that had injured a tit or something, they thought my softer hands, and they would ask me to come down and do some work with her. Well, I did a lot of cooking, raised a big garden, and I took part in a lot of community events. The biggest thing for women in that era was the Women's Institute, and I was on the executive of that for years and years, different places, yeah. And I worked, I don't know how many years on that Chisholm history book. Interviewed people and did stories and rewrote some things and changed it all. I had 5 children, 4 girls and 1 boy. My oldest daughter, Ruth, is a librarian. She got her master's degree in library science, and she's a librarian in Bracebridge. Nancy went into teaching, and she taught in Kitchener and in Gravenhurst, and she retired last year. Margaret did a different route. She trained for a nurse in London, and she worked there in the neonatal unit for about 3 years after she was married. And she married a lad from Prince Edward Island, moved down there, and she kept on nursing. And then she transferred to the University of PEI and taught nursing for about 10 years. And she just retired this year. And Joyce was a musician. She went to Queen's University, and she took her degree in music and drama and religion. And then she married a lad she met at university, and he was also a teacher, and they moved to Oshawa, and she taught there for 25 years. And she died last October. Yeah. And she had a beautiful voice, and she could play every instrument in the band. My son Dan took over our farm, farmed it for a number of years. Then it was sold, and he has moved down to Prince Edward Island because there just was no jobs around here for what he was doing. So he's working in PEI for the potato board. And he's building a house.